Mr Chair.
Mr Speaker.
Call Kevin Haig.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My colleague Gareth Hughes would have liked to be speaking in this third reading, but is unable to. But he's left me some notes in the form of writing on paper. Mr Speaker, kia ora. It's good to be addressing student loan issues. However, this bill, while dealing with a few specific points, ignores the elephant in the room, the massive and growing student loan debt. The Green Party supports the general intent of this bill, however will be voting against it because it increases the already huge student debt burden facing Kiwis. This bill increases and introduces additional student loan fees, which will just add to the national student loan debt burden, extend the time it takes to repay a loan, and because it reduces the effectiveness of the voluntary repayment bonus, take things further back. The national student debt is now in excess of $11 billion, as we've heard, and the loan burden facing hundreds of thousands of Kiwi students and graduates is having a negative effect on families, society and the wider economy. The student loan scheme was established in 1992 and has been a failure. The current total debt as of 30th June 2010 was a staggering $11,145 million and growing at $1 billion a year. For the more than 560,000 New Zealanders who have a student loan, this debate isn't academic. The average individual debt is around $28,800, close to the median New Zealand annual income, and takes years to pay back. Meanwhile, families are delayed, homes are not invested in, and graduates struggle with the debt. Mr Speaker, we voted to support this bill to Select Committee investigation because we acknowledge that there are common sense parts to the bill that we support. However, we have flagged our concerns regarding the new fees, and we'd like to repeat our thanks to submitters, officials and to members of the Select Committee. There are some good aspects of the bill. This bill aims to make the student loan scheme simpler, and this will benefit students as well as graduates. It cuts down on the administration of loans. While at the moment there are two bodies which share information, the IRD and StudyLink, and students and graduates have to go backwards and forwards between the two. So that's an advantage of the bill. We also support greater electronic management of student loans. We think that this is beneficial in reducing administration costs for the IRD, but most importantly gives students greater information, transparency around their loans, and also hopefully encourage them to pay them back faster if they possibly can. It's incredible that it's not until this year, 2011, that the New Zealand Government is transitioning to electronic management of loans. This in particular makes it easier for overseas borrowers to access information, and there are hundreds, if not thousands, of student loan refugees overseas, creating an amazing skills deficit for our country. Each with their own tale of how the student loan burden got out of hand for them. So those are the positives. On the other side of the ledger, however, if greater electronic management and increased efficiencies, as the government intends, are achieved, the Green Party can't fathom why then the government would need to be increasing and bringing in new and increased administration fees. Surely if costs are reduced, the government should be reducing fees, not increasing them. The increase to $60 for students drawing down a new loan and a new $40 charge for new borrowers will add to the student debt burden, likely increase repayment times, and will reduce the effectiveness of the voluntary repayment bonus. The Inland Revenue Department Regulatory Impact Statement, which states the proposed changes are occurring at the same time as the student loan computer redesign. Therefore, there are no additional administrative costs. So why then charge new fees? Why then increase the fees if in fact costs are reducing? Many students and graduates struggling with debt, high living costs and increasing fees are sceptical of these new charges. We heard from student representatives in the Select Committee stage that many students and graduates facing these additional fees will be cynical of this new tax as they see it. Whilst we acknowledge this government hasn't reintroduced interest on student loans in this term of government, although they have not ruled it out, should they be successful in achieving a second term, these new administrative fees are essentially interest by stealth. Interest-free student loans are hugely popular because they reduce the debt burden, make paying easier and faster, and lastly are a fairer way of going about the business of tertiary education. Gareth Hughes has no doubt that the National Party would reintroduce interest by lunchtime if they could, but overwhelming public opposition means that they need to look for stealthy solutions. These new fees will reduce the effectiveness of the voluntary repayment bonus. For those who make a voluntary repayment of $500, they'll receive the 10% repayment bonus of $50, but unfortunately this will just be eaten up by the administration fee. New fees, whether you call them a tax or interest by stealth, simply increase student loan debt, perpetuating the unfair experiment that is crippling a generation with debt. Mr. Speaker, the second part of the bill the Green Party also object to is the pay period change, and we believe the current annual assessment is fairer, especially for those students who earn the bulk of their year's income over the summer break and who will be disadvantaged financially under this bill. Those, say, picking fruit, working in a freezing works or a local cafe full-time over summer will likely see 10% of their weekly income automatically deducted to repay their loan. Yet over the course of the year, if they focus on studying during the academic year, they will be disadvantaged. We are aware that there will be exemptions for this large body of students. However, we anticipate that not many will go through the rigmarole of applying for exemptions. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, this bill continues the F grade the government is earning in this portfolio. From capped spending to discriminating against over 55s to capped enrolments to rising fees, this government is making it less accessible, less affordable, and in some cases downright impossible to be a student in New Zealand. Tertiary education is a smart investment, and in Australia, remember we're trying to catch them, they are spending $5.3 billion extra over 6 years and setting ambitious targets, setting a good model for New Zealand to follow. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, we went into the Select Committee with an open mind on this bill, and we support electronic management of loans as a positive step. However, we cannot support this bill in its current form, its, final form, as the administrative fees and pay period changes benefit IRD primarily at students' expense. The Green Party will not vote to increase the student debt burden. The student loan portfolio is currently projected to grow to $14.5 billion by 2014-15. We are saddling an entire generation with crippling debt that could impact on all areas of their lives, and it's only going to get worse unless we act now. New Zealand needs real solutions to student debt, and this bill is not one of them.
The question is that